1902, Frank Fuller was making wooden washboards in a brick factory in Kalamazoo, Michigan, the kind your grandmother scrubbed clothes against before the electric washing machine existed. Within a decade, that same man would be building precision transmissions for the United States military. And the company he founded would go on to create the single most important piece of equipment in the cab of an American truck. A gearbox so demanding, so unforgiving, and so central to what it meant to drive for a living that it did something no certification or classroom ever could. It turned truck drivers into professionals. The Fuller family's path from washboards to transmissions began when Frank and his brother Charles tried to build automobiles. They partnered with the Blood Brothers in Kalamazoo and formed the Michigan Automobile Company in December of 1902. The cars did not last. Within 2 years, the families had split. The Fullers made a decision that would define an entire industry. They stopped building whole vehicles and focused on one thing: the transmission. By 1913, they reorganized as Fuller & Sons Manufacturing Company and began supplying precision gearboxes to truck builders across the country. Revenue climbed from $75,000 in 1914 to $1.5 million by 1917. During the First World War, Fuller sent engineers to Washington to help design transmissions for military vehicles. By the time Eaton Corporation acquired them in 1958, Fuller employed 1,300 workers in Kalamazoo and generated $31 million in annual sales. Eaton later called Fuller the most profitable acquisition in the company's history. And the reason was simple. What came next changed trucking forever. In 1963, Eaton introduced the Fuller Road Ranger transmission with a twin countershaft design that had never been used in a production heavy-duty gearbox before. Instead of routing all the torque through a single countershaft, the Road Ranger split it between two. That engineering decision had consequences that rippled through every truck stop and freight yard in North America. The twin countershaft allowed engineers to use thinner, lighter gears while increasing torque capacity. It allowed the main shaft to float between the two countershafts on its own gear teeth, eliminating a bearing for every main shaft gear, and it let Eaton pack more ratios into a shorter case. Before the twin countershaft, a single countershaft transmission lasted 500 to 800,000 kilometers before it needed a rebuild. The Road Ranger could run 1.5 to 2 million kilometers. By the 1970s, Eaton dominated the North American commercial transmission market, and the crown jewel of the Road Ranger lineup was the 18-speed. The 18-speed was not a transmission you learned in a weekend. It had an H-pattern main box, an air-operated range selector that doubled the available gears from low to high, and a splitter switch on the shift knob that divided each gear in half. You could operate it as a 9-speed. You could operate it as a 13. But if you wanted all 18 forward gears, you needed to coordinate the shift lever, the range selector, and the splitter button simultaneously while matching engine speed to road speed with no synchronizers to save you. You either double-clutched with precision or you floated the gears by feel, easing the lever out of one gear and into the next at exactly the right revolutions per minute with no clutch at all. Get it wrong, and the gear is ground. Get it badly wrong, and you damaged the sliding clutches and shift forks in ways a rebuilder could see the moment the case came apart. The 18-speed did not tolerate sloppy driving. It rewarded skill and punished carelessness, and the men and women who mastered it knew they had earned something that could not be faked. That mastery was the barrier. For decades, the ability to shift an 18-speed was the dividing line between someone who drove a truck and someone who was a truck driver. It demanded mechanical understanding. You had to know how power flowed from the engine through the input shaft, through the countershafts, and into the drive line. You had to feel the synchronization point through the shifter, sense the engine speed through the floorboard, and anticipate the grade ahead well enough to be in the right gear before you needed it. Drivers who ran mountain roads with heavy loads through the Rockies or the Sierra Nevada did not think of the 18 speed as a piece of equipment. They thought of it as a partner, and the tribal identity it created was real. If you could row through all 18 gears on a loaded climb without grinding, you belonged. Then the fleets made a calculation, not an engineering calculation, a labor calculation. In 2001, Volvo introduced the I-Shift automated manual transmission in Europe. By 2005, Eaton had launched the Ultra Shift series. The Detroit DT12 followed in 2014. These transmissions used sensors and actuators to do what a skilled driver had always done by feel: select the gear, engage the clutch, match the engine speed. The fleets discovered something they had been hoping for. A computer could shift gears more consistently than a tired driver on hour 9 of a 14-hour day. More importantly, it could shift gears for a driver who had never double-clutched anything in his life. By 2012, 90% of Class 8 trucks still had manual transmissions. Within just a few years, the market inverted. Today, roughly 80% of new Class 8 trucks roll off the line with automated transmissions. Volvo reports 93% AMT adoption. Freightliner reports 94% on the Cascadia. Mack reports 94% on the Anthem. NFI, one of the largest carriers in North America, converted its entire 2,600 vehicle fleet and has fewer than 10 manuals left. The consequences were exactly what you would expect. Driving schools shifted their training to automatics. A new generation of CDL holders entered the industry with the E restriction on their license, meaning they were not certified to operate a manual transmission commercial vehicle. The barrier that had defined professional trucking for half a century was removed, not because it failed, but because it was inconvenient. The industry did not need professionals who understood their machines. It needed operators who could be trained in weeks instead of months. These drivers viewed the truck as an appliance rather than a system. The mechanical knowledge that once separated an experienced trucker from a beginner, the ability to adjust brakes, diagnose a drivetrain vibration, sense a developing problem before it became a breakdown, began disappearing with the clutch pedal. In June of 2023, Eaton discontinued the RTLO 16918B, one of the original 18 speed models. In June of 2024, the RTLO 18918B followed, the transmission that Fuller built from a washboard factory in Kalamazoo, the gearbox that made Eaton's most profitable acquisition worth every dollar, the 18 speed that separated truck drivers from everyone else, left the production line for the last time. The automated version still carries the Road Ranger name. It still uses the twin countershaft architecture that Fuller's engineers perfected 60 years ago. But the clutch pedal is gone. The shift lever is gone. The skill is gone. If you ever sat in the cab of a loaded rig, dropped it into low range, split the first gear, and pulled 80,000 pounds off a dead stop without a shudder, you know exactly what was lost. And you know it cannot be taught by a computer. The 18 speed did not just move freight. It proved you were worth trusting with the freight. That was the point.